What is up, YouTube? And today we're going to be talking about the two units as well as the two artifacts that will be replacing Fumir and Sez, who have about a day or two left on their banner depending on when you're watching this video. Now, if you guys are wondering if I think Fumir is worth pulling for, you guys can check out my last video for a pretty in-depth video about her. Sez is pretty terrible, so yeah, I definitely recommend skipping on Sez and his artifact. It's just not worth it. This unit is just hot doo-doo. But Fumir, pretty good unit overall. I think she's pretty decent if you run her into a sleep setup and you actually have fast units paired with her to activate her elemental wisdom. But not gonna really talk about it too much because I think she's just a okay to decent unit. So the first banner that will actually be replacing Fumir in Sez is the Earth Ranger Iseria, who you guys can actually get from the selective summon and who I personally recommend you actually get from the reroll. Now, she's a very, very powerful unit for PvE, one of the best units in the game because of her S3 having that full dispel with a defense break and a unable to be buffed. Extremely, extremely powerful in PvE because a lot of bosses actually have a ton of buffs that you want to stop from them putting up. And also, of course, decreased defense, kind of a must-have in every single team for PvE because it will just further your damage by a lot. Without decreased damage, you're not going to really do that much damage on the boss and your runs will just take hella long. So I highly recommend you have at least one defense breaker per every team in PvE for the most part. And Iseria is just really good because of her S3. And also she has an S2 that can reset the cooldowns of an ally, very commonly paired with like Tamarin, who starts the battle with her S3 on cooldown. So you can actually keep Tamarin's S3 idle form permanently up if you run your other two units with their skills off, because Oathkeeper only targets units that actually have their cooldowns or skills on. So if you have your skills off, Oathkeeper will not actually be targeted on any of those units. And our S1, pretty cool defense break because it's 2 turns instead of 1. And of course, it's very powerful. And honestly, Iseria does pretty decent damage as well because her base stats are pretty high and her multipliers are pretty high. A lot of people just don't know this and keep her at 5 stars, but as a 6-star unit, she does a ton of damage. Now, for PvP though, she's not really used, so you're not going to really use her anywhere there, but in PvE, there's so many areas of content you can actually use her. If you look at her hero rating, there's going to be a ton of people that talk about PvE. Dark Corvus girlfriend, I guess you can use her in Guild Wars offense with Dark Corvus if you want to speed up your runs, but super, super powerful in PvE. Now, obviously, you don't want to, look too much into these reviews, but you can see even from the usage statistics here that she's going to be used. These don't really show you anything, huh? Why does it not show you the areas of content? Freaking Smilegate. But anyways, this unit is used hella in PvE and she's very, very powerful. So definitely a must-have unit. Now the thing is, do you need to pull on her banner now? I would say no, because she is available from the story summon. Although it's very nice if you can get her now. If you guys are worried about a collab or even the Espa collab coming back, or even new units, then you can save your bookmark and skip on her and pull her later on with your story summon. But she's waifu AF and she's very good, so why would you not pull for her, right? But of course, you guys can wait because she's available from the story summon, and honestly most of you guys probably have her from the selective summon anyways. Now looking at Iseria's artifact, Song of Stars, this artifact is extremely powerful for PvE. This is one of the best ranger artifacts for PvE if we actually look. The other one will be Bloodstone because of healing. This artifact's also very good. But Song of Stars is super powerful. You'll see that it's on my Elfelt for actually hunt one-shots and also for Rift. But also, if you are doing Wyvern still, you're going to see Furious uses this 43.7% of the time because it is just a free debuff on the boss for Wyvern to actually reach that debuff cap, making it so that your runs are way more consistent and actually a lot more faster. And just an extremely powerful artifact overall. I think if you're new to the game, you definitely want at least one copy. Even at plus 15, it's 75%, which will make your Wyvern runs so much more stable. And in the mid and late game, you don't have to really worry about it too much because it's not as good. But there's some areas of content that you definitely want it, like Expedition, even Rift, and just any other area of content where you want extra damage. Song of Stars is very good because Target will make it so that Rage sets proc as well, so it's an extra way to proc Rage set. I think it's definitely an artifact you definitely want one copy of. And the earlier you get it, the better it is because, like I said, it is just so good for Wyvern. So it's definitely going to be worth your 240 powder. Next up, we have Vildred. So kind of funny, Iseria is like a main character in the game if you guys follow the lore. Even if you guys don't, you guys probably know because it's like shoved in your face in the first 10 minutes of installing. But Vildred and Iseria are both main characters, so it's kind of funny their banners are running. And Vildred's also a unit that's available from the selective summon and actually was my personal pick a long time ago because he's a very good farmer. Ton of AoE damage. So if we actually get his S3, AoE attack scales with his speed, It's nice because Vildreds in PvP are built decently fast, like 240 speed I'd say, but the speed scaling doesn't really matter for him. His speed scaling is super low. Next we have his S2. If you actually kill an enemy with his S1 or his S3, you will do an AoE attack after giving yourself an attack buff, and also CR push yourself by 20%, only Vildred of course, when an enemy dies regardless of who kills it. So that makes him very powerful in cleave, because if he kills one squish unit with his S3, you'll proc this Dancing Blade and do a ton of damage. If an ally on your team kills an enemy, you'll get CR push to cut and can clean up. Then we have his S1, single target double attack, so double attack. Yes, it's a two target attack. I don't know what I'm saying. And this will also scale with your speed. Now, honestly, his damage multipliers are pretty low compared to other units. The speed doesn't really help that much, and just his attack modifiers are pretty bad. But he is still very good in PvE because he has all AoE damage. I used to use him all the time in Adventure. Farms very, very quickly. He's very good in the early game stages. Also pretty strong for Asmnak 13, one of the best units. If you actually turn his skills off and make sure his S1 kills the eggs, you can actually constantly proc his S2 and have attack buff and CR push. He's very strong there. Also just good in like regular Banshee 13 as well if you want to use him there. And even in Hell Raid or Nightmare Raid, he can be used on the Spider boss because he does a ton of AoE damage, and also Secretary Vera. So pretty decent for PvE. Not as good as before because we have a ton of good AoE damage dealers such as like Bomb Model Kana, who's from Connections, who's just better now because she has buffs for your team and can also dispel buffs. But still, Vildred is pretty good in the early game in Adventure mode for PvE and just as an AoE damage dealer in general. Now for PvP, he's an extremely powerful unit. One, because like I mentioned, he can follow up cleave very well. You're not going to use him to open, obviously. You're going to want to use him as like a 240, 250 speed bridge unit, because what you can actually do is if you have a very fast unit, set up another unit to one-shot a unit, such as like, you know, you have like in a mid, boost up like your S10 and your Spectre Tenebria, or like your Watcher Shuri to one-shot something. Your Vildred will then CR push himself with his S2 passive, and then you can S3 and clean up the battle with like a cheap Soul Burn, which makes his S3 do a lot more damage. And the biggest thing about him is his imprint. So his imprint is speed, 12 speed. I think it's the second highest speed imprint in the game behind Wanderer's Silk, but Vildred is just better for raw cleave because he does way more damage than Wanderer's Silk. And this 12 speed imprint is insane. Like, just having 12 speed extra just gives you a huge boost. It makes it so that you can't really get speed RNG'd, and you can just outspeed very consistently with him. Commonly, you're going to see him picked in RTA with other speed imprints like Watcher Shuri, Wanderer's Silk, Green Sid. And in Guild Wars offense and Arena offense, if you are scared of getting outsped, you can always just throw Vildred on your team with the speed imprint. He's very strong. For that reason, because his imprint is so strong, I think most early game players are going to only pull one copy of him anyways if they do want him, even though I don't really think he's worth pulling for, which we'll talk about in a sec. But in the late game, if you're a late game player that loves to speed contest and cleave, you're going to want to SSS this bad boy ASAP. For me personally, I probably will go for an SSS because mine's at, I think, S, so I only need 2 copies. But I definitely want the speed imprint on him. It's the best imprint for himself. That doesn't make sense. Vildred's best imprint is for himself and not for Arbiter Vildred, is what I'm saying. You're way better off imprinting Green Vildred over Arbiter Vildred. So yeah, make sure you actually imprint him instead. Arbiter Vildred, not really a great unit and doesn't really need imprints. And of course, exclusive equipment makes him do a ton more damage now, so he's even better. So I think if you're in the early game, honestly, I wouldn't even pull for him. I think it's just way outdated for PvE now. He's decent, right? Like in the areas of content I mentioned, but there's other units that do it better and are also easily accessible, like Bomb Model Kana, Spectre Tenebria, and stuff like that. But in PvP, if you are a speed contester, speed demon like me, not really, I wish I was, I think you definitely want to SSS him or pull for imprints, because very good speed imprint, very powerful, and just as a unit in cleave, he synergizes very well in fast cleave playstyles. Next up, we have his artifact, Sword of Summer Twilight. Basically, when you use a AoE attack, you'll penetrate defense, and also if you kill an enemy with that AoE attack, you'll CR push all your allies. So you can see why it can be good on Vildred, because he gets boosted up, he S3s, cleans up, and then pushes his allies again. So you're going to see it's mostly used on Green Vildred and also Arbiter Vildred, and you're also going to see Ran, right? So these are the 3 most common units you'll see. Ran only wants to use this. Like, honestly, I'm not going to lie, this artifact is only really worth it at plus 30, where it goes to, I believe it's 20%, even though it's only 5%. The reason why I want this maxed out is because there are just so many good damage artifacts in the game, right? You have Alexa's Basket, who's probably best installed in Arbiter Vildred. You have something like a Rihanna Luciella, who is going to be best installed on Ran. You can even use something that's not of the Thief class, you can, I'll have to scroll down all the way now, but it's gonna take some time. Just bear with me right now. You can use like a symbol of unity, of course, for extra damage. You can also use, if you have it, you can use the portrait of the saviors from the Guilty Gear collab, which honestly is probably one of the best options if you just want to use a cheap artifact that you farmed from the collab. For 4-star options, right? Even for Green Vildred, like Elia's knife is very good because you're gonna be hitting low HP targets anyway. So this defense penetration will be pretty much the same as a plus 30 Sword of Summer Twilight, except you're just not getting that CR push. So if you don't have your Sword of Summer Twilight plus 30, like Elia's knife, very good option on Green Vildred for PvP, and of course in PvE, Daydream Joker anyway. So I don't really think it's worth it unless you have like plus 27 or plus 24 and you're using it already on like a Blue Ran or just another unit. But yeah, pretty much it for this Strategic Pool video, guys. I think out of everything, Iseria's banner is the one to consider. I think Vildred's banner can skip entirely. Iseria, very good unit, although she's available from the story summon, so it's really up to you if you want to wait and pull her later with it, or pull it right now and save your story summon ticket. And her artifact Song Star is a must-have for PvE, especially in the early game. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next video.